This week on One Nation Under Crime, we're going to the Catskills!
You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss one case from each year, starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
And in the procession of counting goes, we're to episode 15.
Woohoo! Whoop, whoop. We can get our permit. Just saying.
And if you knew anything about Leah's life from the past couple of weeks, that's really funny.
And my 15-year-old nephew did get his permit this Thursday. Whoop, whoop. He did. He studied his booklet and he got his permit. That's all we have to say about that.
Oh, goodness. Now y'all only have, 10 years till the next one?
Oh, goodness. Well, actually, I have another nephew that will be 15.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Next June.
I got 9 years till I have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Ooh. Not fun of that. So, this week, we are discussing Murderer's Creek.
Oh, that's not a fun creek.
No.
I'd rather go to Jawson's. Ha
I think anybody would rather go to that one instead of this one, to be honest. So, let's see. Our sources for this week. We've actually got a pretty good bit of interesting tidbits around the area that we are discussing this week. So, I've got a lot of history as far as that goes with it. So, it should be a fun time, guys. So, our sources. The Greene County website. They were actually very helpful. The Catskill Archive. A blog called Night Before Noon. And let's see. This is a fun word. And this is the word of it. I had to triple check. Reminiscences. Yes.
That's quite the word. I'm not going to attempt. Good for you. Huzzah.
Reminiscences.
Nicely done. We've not been drinking.
No. Of Catskill, local sketches, the memoir of James D. Pinkney, and legendary locals of Greene County, New York by David and Wanda Dorpfeld.
What's their last name?
Dorpfeld.
Oh, you said Dorkfeld. I was going to be so excited.
You know that's what they called him in school, though.
I mean...
David Dorkfeld. You know that had to be...
That's probably what I would have called him. I'd have been their friend, too. Let's be honest.
Leah was a bully.
I'm not a bully.
I said you were. I didn't say you are.
I wasn't a bully.
You could be now, honestly. No, out of the two of us, it's me.
It's all you. All you. I mean, I may have said something, like that, but, I say that to my friends.
Dorkfeld. Oh, that's funny.
Just saying.
So for episode 15, we are in 1813, and we got some events that have gone on this year. Not as many as last week. Last week we had, it was 1812, so we had a lot going on. March 4th, James Madison was sworn in as President of the United States for his second term, and Eldridge Gary as his Vice President.
Eldridge.
You
don't hear many Eldridges.
No, that must be a family name. It had like Lilburn. That has to be a family name.
Must be.
Weird. March 29th, the Republican Army of the North defeated the Spanish Royalist Army in present-day Bexar County, Texas, and the Spanish forces retreated back to San Antonio at the Battle of Rocio Creek in the Mexican War of Independence. April 6th, Gutierrez de Lara drafts a Declaration of Independence, which establishes the First Republic of Texas. August 30th, a group of the Creek tribe, who belonged to the Red Sticks, killed hundreds of settlers at Fort Mims in Alabama during the Creek War, and it is known as the Fort Mims Massacre.
Ew.
November 16th, the British announced a blockade of Long Island Sound, leaving only the New England coasts open to shipping. December 17th, a trade embargo came into effect, which was aimed at New England merchants who had been supplying the British in Canada. And then, let's see, an event undated for this year, the Philomathean Society of the University of Pennsylvania was founded, and it is the oldest continuously existing literary society in the United States. And
Wow.
then our ongoing events, we have the War of 1812 and the Creek War, which were ongoing at this time. So let's get to our births. We have on August 29th, Henry Berg, and he is very influential. Do you know why?
I do not.
One, he's a Virgo, like you,
Yep, that's my sign.
and it makes total sense of who he is, being a Virgo like you. He is the founder of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or the ASPCA.
Well, I do love a critter.
He was the founder of that. Yeah, for y'all who don't know, Leah's had a hedgehog.
Uh-huh.
You've had...
I've had hamsters, hedgehog, I had parakeets.
And the hedgehog is like within the last 5 years. You had a hedgehog.
Oh, yeah. His name was Sir
Henry Pricklesworth.
Yes, we called him Hank for short. Yeah.
So yes, it makes sense that you and the founder of ASPCA would both be Virgos.
Had a pet squirrel, raccoon.
I would like a pet raccoon. You remember Pumpkin?
Yes.
Oh, if anybody followed Pumpkin the raccoon, I was so sad when Pumpkin passed away from this life.
Very sad. But Juniper.
Oh, I love
Fox,
Juniper Fox.
They have a raccoon too.
I love Juniper and
yes.
What's his name?
Fig.
I like Fig.
Did you see they had to amputate another part of Fig's little
it doesn't
foot,
surprise
little nub?
me. It's so sad.
Yes.
Just people. And then what's the other one? Elmore?
Yes, so
Elmore,
cute.
yeah.
And they have. Ooh, sorry. I hit the mic with my finger. I got very excited. I'm sorry. I got very excited. They have a new little one that is so stinking cute, and it's another botanical name, but I can't remember. But he's like a grayish color.
They're very pretty. They do a really good thing. If y'all don't follow Juniper Fox on Instagram, go follow Juniper. They're
they have all kinds of critters, not just foxes.
Well, and they too. The people who run the Juniper Fox page, she does a very good job of educating people on why not to take in foxes.
Yes,
because foxes are very territorial, and they have
very specific needs.
Very specific, and they have the foxes, while yes, they do live inside sometimes, they come in and out, but they have like these massive outdoor areas that they like separately because they can't trust them all together.
Right.
But yes, they have a lot of critters. She has a lot. She rehabilitates a lot of animals.
Yes.
And then their dog Moose. So
anyway, sorry, little segue there, but we both of us love critters. That's one thing that we bond over.
Love the animals. We do have. Leah's got quite a few, and then I
have had.
Yes, and right now you have two.
Yeah, I'm down to one dog and one cat.
For probably the first time.
When we first got married, I went through withdrawals because all I had was a husband and 2 fish. Like, I had no furry critter to welcome me when I came home for 9 months, and that was just weird. Like, I had dogs and cats. We got Thelma Lou. The first dog we got when we got married, we bought a house, and I told my husband, when we get a house, we're getting a dog. And we bought a house, and in a week we had a dog. And his name was Barney.
We
had Barney. And we were told he was a beagle mix. He was a lab mix with a beagle. I still get my brother-in-law especially jokes with me about that to this day. He's like, look, hey, Leah, here's a beagle. I'm like, shut up. Shut up. Barney was a sweet boy. But then we got Thelma Lou. I mean, of course, we had to name her Thelma Lou. We don't know what Thelma Lou was. She was 4 pounds of...
Part rat, part squirrel,
Do
part Yorkie.
not.
Look, I threw Yorkie in there, but that dog was tiny. She was part rat, part squirrel, part Yorkie.
4 pounds of diva princess,
part Chinese crested.
Feistiness. Do not. I'd rather you say rat than Chinese crested. She was diva princess,
she was.
feisty.
She gave Axel the runaround.
Oh gosh,
and Axel was their mastiff,
yes.
and she ran that house.
She did.
So
they all were submissive to her, and it was hilarious. And when I say 4 pounds, like the most she ever weighed was
tiny.
4 pounds, and that was with her collar and tags on. So but she ran the roost. So yeah, so we had Barney, and then we had Thelma Lou.
Which I told you this after the passing of sweet Axel. Thelma Lou was on the other side of that rainbow bridge, and she's like, "Oh God, you
found me. Go sit over there.
You're not.
Go sit over there.
I didn't tell them it was time for you yet. I'm not ready. I haven't prepared.
Just go sit over there.
I need a moment.
I'm going to be over here. Go sit over there."
Yeah.
She never really realized or admitted that she was a dog.
Well, of course not.
I mean, if any dog ever tried to like sniff her, she'd be like, "What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. I don't.
Why are you? I'm not a dog. Why are you treating me like one?"
Claire's not a cat, so yeah. And then I have Fletcher, the dog, and then we have Claire, and then we have Knox. Claire and Knox are both Kit Kats, so that's what I call them all the time.
Well, what I have now, I have Penny, who is a dog, and she's a Cocker Wawa. She's a Cocker Spaniel Chihuahua mix, and we have Bernadette or Bernie. Not after that Bernie. She's Bernadette. We call her Bernie. It's after Bernadette from The Big Bang Theory. She's a calico, and she's beautiful.
Hence Bernie and Penny.
Yes, Penny is from Big Bang as well.
So
there you go.
Mine don't have any. Well, Claire's from Jurassic Park or Jurassic World.
Oh,
Claire's Jurassic World.
I didn't know that.
Of my daughter, she loves Jurassic World.
I didn't know that's where Claire was from.
Yes,
I knew Knox.
And then Knox and Fletcher are both Harry Potter characters. Mundungus Fletcher.
I didn't realize Fletcher.
So he was originally named Fletcher when we got him for unknown reasons. And then when I realized it was Mundungus Fletcher, I've connected those. We kept it. So yeah. And then Knox, N-O-X, just N-O-X, not K-N-O-X, just N-O-X.
Yep.
Because he only came around at night. So that's about our babies. Yeah. There's our babies. So anywho.
Now you know. You're welcome.
The more you know. So let's get to deaths.
Nice little segue there.
In 1813, we did have some notable deaths, and I hate to sound like super excited in saying that because I didn't mean to sound really excited.
Let's get to death.
But our deaths for this week both tie back to previous episodes.
Oh.
So I thought that was really interesting. So April 19th of 1813, Dr. Benjamin Rush died. He is the doctor who was friends with James Durham from episode 3.
Yep.
He was the one who's the signer of the Declaration of Independence, a chemist, a physician, and he was the one that brought up mental health issues after slaves were released. So he died in 1813. And then on August 23rd, Alexander Wilson, who was a Scottish-American ornithologist who you might remember from our Meriwether Lewis episode, he was the friend of Meriwether Lewis that went and paid for the family to keep up his grave, and he was the first one to look into Lewis's death as a murder. So he died that year. So let's get into our case for this week. August 20th of 1813, the body of Sally Hamilton is found in Murderers Creek in Greene County, New York.
Time?
Not related.
Okay. Hamilton, New York.
I know. I even looked it up. Like I Googled, was Sally Hamilton related to? Couldn't find anything.
Gotta ask.
I know. So we're going to go into Greene County. And sorry, guys, but I kind of went a little crazy going into Greene County because it was super fascinating. So we got a lot of history on Greene County. And
Can't
if you're
imagine
from,
you doing that.
I know. Well, there was so much that was interesting about it, and there were so many different little things. And I don't know if I don't know if we will ever get back to Greene County. So I wanted to put it all in here.
Okay.
And there's some interesting stuff in here. So don't fast forward, guys. I promise it's worth it. So Greene County in New York State was created on March 25th of 1800 from portions of Albany and Ulster counties. The county was named after the commander of the Southern campaign of the Revolutionary War, Nathaniel Greene. And Henry Knox wanted to hire you. I even put that in parentheses after Nathaniel
to be their
Greene.
secretary.
Yeah, I don't think so. Now, why are you upset?
I'm not.
Guys, we could honestly do an entire Patreon episode of us just going through Hamilton.
I mean, just give us a line and we'll just tell you the rest.
So, and actually in parentheses, right after Nathaniel Greene, I have, and Henry Knox wanted to hire you. So the county is located at the northern end of the Catskills Mountains and is bordered by the Hudson River, and it's 2 hours north of New York City. Today, the county consists of 14 towns and 5 villages. The first settlement in the county was on the Hudson River, and it was a Native American flint mining site. The Catskills Native Americans built several villages in the Catskills area and took advantage of the flint mine deposits, the abundance of fish and game in the area, and the natural harbor that was there. And for those who aren't familiar with flint, according to Webster's dictionary, flint is a massive, hard, dark quartz that produces a spark when struck by steel. So if you ever wondered what that was in movies, it's flint. Flint was also used to make stone tools, and today is actually used as the abrasive agent on sandpaper and in mills that grind raw material for ceramic and paint industries. The more you know. Some notable people from Greene County are United States Congressman John Adams, not the John Adams you were thinking of. I looked it up. Because I was like, wouldn't they say President John Adams? Huh.
Or
Looked
John
it up.
Quincy Adams?
Yeah, not the same one. Levy Hill, who is the early inventor of color photography.
Oh, interesting.
Edwin L. Drake, who invented the method to drill oil from the ground.
Interesting.
And Scott Adams, the American cartoonist who created the comic strip Dilbert.
Dilbert.
So, some people might remember the story of Rip Van Winkle is also set in the Catskills. And for those of you who aren't very familiar, pretty sure any of our U.S. listeners had to read it in middle school. But basically, Rip Van Winkle leaves his home, and this is all off of memory. I didn't take notes on it because I pretty much remember it. He leaves home due to a nagging wife, from what I remember, with his dog. And he gets drunk and falls asleep in the Catskill Mountains and wakes up 20 years later. And when he wakes up, time has passed and the Revolutionary War has passed. And it's basically like he's trying to figure out the world after he fell asleep for 20 years. So that's Rip Van Winkle.
Something like that.
Yes. Well, I briefly read over it as I was looking at it. But yes, that is the gist of it. I did mention the Catskill Mountains earlier, and we will go into a little bit more about them now. They are a part of the Appalachian Mountains that we discussed back in episode 10. The Catskill Mountain area is generally considered the area within the borders of Catskills Park, which is a 700,000 acre park. Yeah.
Just a little
Yes.
little bit of a trek. You can do it in an afternoon.
It's fine. It's not much. Most people might not know, but the famous music festival Woodstock took place in Bethel, New York, and it is also a part of the Catskills. Woodstock was, for those who don't know,
How do you not know Woodstock?
How do you not know? I don't know. I
Come
understand.
on.
But
Jimi Hendrix.
some of our international listeners may not know what Woodstock is.
That's true. It is
So
pretty historic.
Woodstock was a music and art festival that took place from August 15th to August 18th in 1969. Nearly 500,000 people were in attendance, and 32 bands were showcased, including Santana, The Grateful Dead, Creedence Clearwater Revival, The Who, and Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was actually, which I was looking this up when I was reading it, he was actually one of the last performers, and like over half of the crowd had already left by the time he performed, which is so weird. A few stats regarding the concert goers, just so people can kind of understand how crazy Woodstock turned out to be. 2 people died, one from using insulin, unaware of whether it was for diabetic reasons or not, and the other from someone being run over in a tent by a tractor.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
There were 2 births, so I guess 2 people died, 2 people were born.
I mean, evened out.
And this is, I had to double check this stat. 742 people overdosed on drugs. Didn't die, but they overdosed on drugs.
How many did you say?
742.
Oh, mercy.
However, it's important to note, given the number of the attendees, the stats aren't that bad. 500,000 people. It's not bad when you really think about it.
Well,
I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. Could have been a lot worse.
Could have.
Let's see. The Catskills also have the nickname of the Borscht Belt. The reason for this is due to the influx. Borscht, yes. The reason for this is due to the influx of Jewish New Yorkers who started vacationing in the Catskills in the mid-1900s. At the height of its popularity, there were around... How many resorts do you think would be in the Catskill Mountains? Just resorts.
Just resorts.
At this time, when it was at the height of vacationing.
500.
Yes. It's the only time Leah's ever going to get that.
Finally.
It was going to work out for her one day. So, there you go.
That's awesome.
Even a blind mouse catches a piece of cheese every now and then.
I thought it was a blind squirrel and a nut.
I guess it's kind of whatever you want it to be. So yes, there were around 500 resorts in the Catskills area. So the term borscht is actually a Ukrainian soup. It's made of beetroots as the main ingredient. Brought to the U.S. by Ashkenazi Jewish immigrants and Slavic immigrants. So, since a majority, if not all of the tourists in its heyday were Jewish, this is where Borscht Belt came from. So, this term is similar to others in the U.S., such as the Rust Belt and the Bible Belt, which is what we're in.
Yes.
So, it's kind of how different places like that kind of got their name. One of the major pastimes at the resorts were comedians, and many of the ones we know got their start on the stages in the Borscht Belt. Some of these are Woody Allen, I put in parentheses, problematic. If you know anything about Woody Allen, he's a bit of a subject, we'll say. Bit of a I don't want to get sued.
There are things that have been said about him that have been, stories that have been published
that are true.
That are not the most endearing. Do not make us love him a whole lot.
I mean, you marry your adopted stepdaughter. I have issues.
Yeah.
Anyways, other ones. Lenny Bruce. George Burns, Rodney Dangerfield, who people might know. Some of these I was able to find kind of things that they've been on. So Rodney Dangerfield was in Caddyshack, in Natural Born Killers, Casper, The Ed Sullivan Show, Johnny Carson, and like a ton of others. His IMDb is ridiculous for how many things he was
you
in.
skipped right over George Burns.
There wasn't a whole lot. Like, he was on some comedy shows, but there wasn't a whole like big list of things
He was
that
in
he was.
Oh God, You Devil with John Denver.
That is true. However,
I'm just saying.
it's trying to pull some things in, people. Like, no.
I'm sorry. George Burns is just classic. I love him.
So after that, we have Estelle Getty, Sophia Petrillo from the Golden Girls, which
Picture it. Sicily.
Sicily. I love her. Buddy Hackett, he voiced Scuttle in The Little Mermaid.
Oh.
Mickey Katz, who is actually the grandfather of Jennifer Grey.
Huh.
I know, full circle. We'll get to who she is in a moment. So then we have Dawn Rickles and Joan Rivers. She performed in the Borscht Belt during this time. Isn't that weird?
That is.
There's an entire section that was devoted to the types of jokes that were popular, and they were bad luck, puns, physical complaints, such as, my doctor said that I was in terrible shape. I told him, I want a second opinion. He said, all right, you ugly too. Much like those jokes. And nagging wives, of course. So speaking of Jennifer Grey earlier, if everyone should know she is Baby.
And
And
nobody puts her in a corner.
Nobody. And the Catskills were settings for movies and shows such as Dirty Dancing, even though the filming for this was actually done in Virginia and North Carolina, just FYI. And then lastly, people might recognize this era from season 2
of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
We love Maisel.
Oh my gosh, she is hilarious.
Love Maisel.
It's like Gilmore Girls with a little more spice.
It is. I love her. I just love her. That would, if I could go back and live in a time period,
That's mine too.
That would be mine.
Because people dressed for
I don't
everything.
even think if that's my reason. I just think that I don't know.
People
I feel as
put
though
their best foot forward.
I feel as though I would possibly be Maisel.
You would. You would. You would. But I love it. But I love she said we're going to the Catskills. I mean, I loved it. And every time you would say Catskills in the beginning, I thought that every time.
Yep.
We're going to the Catskills. But I would not be Susie, though. I would not be Susie.
No, you would not be Susie. You couldn't be Susie.
I would be her friend. I would be Midge's friends.
Yeah.
That would be me.
Yeah, that's true. Or her mom. You and her mom have a lot of, I'm not saying in age, chill out. I'm saying in personality and the way y'all are both very like real proper and real like, pearl clutching at times.
Do not call me a pearl clutcher.
I said at times.
Oh my gosh. Let me clutch my pearls at you calling me a pearl clutcher.
I know, right? Exactly. Yeah. So.
No, yes, I do
Maisel's
love
such
that
a
time.
good.
Oh gosh, yes.
It's such a good show.
But there is language. Don't watch it with kids.
Oh, do not watch it with kids.
There is language.
But it's such a good show. Otherwise, if you have not watched it,
it's very fast paced. Like you have to be listening. You have to be paying attention. It's not one that you can be on your phone and
it's
watch.
It's not slow. Like the timeline is never slow. It's not like there's an episode where it just kind of like drags. There's like every episode.
It's fast paced, and
there are reasons it has won awards.
Yes, it's fantastic.
It's wonderful. So that was a lot of information on the Catskills, but they are fascinating. And this episode, like I said before, was a really good time to talk
We
about
need to go there one day.
I would love to go to the Catskills.
With Midge.
With Midge, yes. So this week's case takes place at Murderer's Creek.
I don't want to go there.
However, it doesn't appear that this was always the name. In 1673, the creek was listed on a deed for sale of the land as Murderer's Kill. However, it was then again referenced in government documents in 1788 by the same name. But the name might have been a mispronunciation. In Middle Dutch, stick with me here, guys. I had to look up how to say these things, and I might butcher it. In Middle Dutch, the word moeder means mother.
Oh.
In Kiele, maybe, means creek. There is also another Dutch word that's modder, which also means muddy.
Ah.
So it could have been Mother's Creek or Muddy Creek, because either way, it would have been moeder Kiele or Mother Kiele.
Which either one really
Mother
makes sense.
or Muddy. So that's how it could have been translated to Murderer's Kill because of the way that it's said. With the apostrophe and murders from the first reference, I think it's likely that it was intended to be Mother's Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no possessive in muddy. Anyways, moving on. My journalism degree kicking in. Then when the body of a young woman was found murdered in the creek, people took the name and now it is referred to as Murder's Creek.
Yikes.
Yes. Sally Hamilton was the second daughter.
No relation to Alexander.
Sally Hamilton was the second daughter of Samuel Hamilton Esquire. I would love for Esquire to be, I guess it could. I could go to school and be a lawyer. Maybe Esquire. It's what, anyways, if you didn't know, Esquire is what, technically, if you're an attorney or a lawyer, you can put at the end of your name. And was said to be, she was said to be an amiable girl at 20 years old. One evening, Sally left her family home and walked the half mile to visit with her sister. Accounts vary as to who she was going to visit. Some say it was her sister. Others just say it was a neighbor. We're going with the fact that it was her sister in this story.
Is this a married sister who lives?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, at 20, Sally was a spinster, most likely.
On the shelf.
Not saying. They just put her out to pasture. So it was around 8 o'clock when Sally was done visiting and she decided to return home. She was accompanied by a couple of friends. One source said 2 were, quote, elderly ladies. I'm sorry. So what, 30?
Gosh, that means I've got one foot in the grave.
You're at least married, so
well, that's true. That's true.
They're putting me out to pasture at this point. I'm the elderly lady walking selling.
But I don't have any children, so
it's true. I'm a scorn to society. Anyway, she departed from her friends when she was about 300 feet away from her home.
300 feet.
The street she lived on was also it was said it was very well settled and not at all rural. It wasn't a rural area. But she never made it back. Sally's disappearance wasn't noticed until the next morning. Her parents, or really it's her dad, from what I understand, a lot of things said her parents. I think her mom had already passed at this time. Because he is the only one that's ever mentioned. So I feel like if she were alive, she would have been mentioned.
Yeah.
So her dad thought that she might have stayed with her sister the night before, and her sister thought that she had returned back home. Immediately, the entire town of Athens in Greene County started searching for Sally. It took them 3 days, but they did eventually find Sally under a bridge in what is now known as Murderers Creek.
Yikes.
This location was just 500 feet away from where Sally's friends had last seen her. So only 800 feet away from her home.
And it took them 3 days?
Yes. We'll find out why. So there's no trigger warning for this episode because we are describing injuries. It's not a description of the actual murder. The injuries, while not great, they're not...
Right.
Some things I can't... it's not... it's bad, no doubt.
But somebody died.
So the description of Sally's injuries are as follows. Her skull was broken. This is actually a quote that was from the medical examiner's sheet. Quote, "The skull was broken, which doubtless produced death, but a medical examination proved that the murder was but a sequel to outrage. Sexual assault could not be determined, but it was also not left out as a possibility in the report of the examination. So while it wasn't mentioned, later on we'll kind of see how that could have been a portion of it. But it never said in the medical examination whether or not that was a factor, which I found very interesting. That's
disturbing that it couldn't be determined.
So when questioning those who lived closest to the scene of the crime, a woman said she did hear screaming on the night that it was assumed Sally was murdered. And she heard it between 8 and 9 o'clock, which would have been when Sally was going home.
Yeah.
The woman mentioned the screams to her neighbors, but they brushed her off, and Sally's cries went unanswered. Which, doesn't that sound familiar from our very first case?
Mm-hmm.
A jury of inquest was called, and they agreed on the verdict of willful murder by the hands of some person or persons unknown. We've discussed before how a broken heart and a shocked town will do anything to try and find the unidentified subject of the crime. Several arrests were made because of this, and one man was only reported as having the last name of Kavanaugh, and he was accused and tried for Sally's murder. Even though he was acquitted, it's not said why or how he was acquitted. He was, quote, drummed out of town, probably as a punishment for his ill looks, for he had the most villainous countenance ever seen.
The most villainous countenance ever seen.
Yes. So 2 years later, in 1815, another man, Patrick Kavanaugh, but spelled differently, spelled with a C instead of a K, confessed to the murder, and he was put on trial. But he was eventually deemed insane, and it was discovered that he had no real knowledge of the crime.
Oh.
Several years after the confession of Patrick Kavanaugh, a U.S. soldier who was known by the last name as Sickler was indicted. Another soldier lent, what, like lint in your pocket?
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Not lint like Easter.
Gotcha.
Anyways, he was the one to come forward to authorities with the knowledge that Sickler was the one who actually committed the murder. The timeline is a little disjointed and it's pieced together from different sources, but from what I understand, this is the series of events that occurred the night of Sally Hamilton's murder. 4 soldiers who were at the Greenbush barracks deserted their post. For anyone who's wondering, because I was, desertion is when a military post is abandoned without permission, and the soldier has no intents on returning, so you don't plan on coming back. You might think that AWOL is the same thing, but absence without leave, which is what AWOL, or unauthorized absence, which is sometimes called UA, is only a temporary absence, and it's assumed that the soldier is going to return to their post. But a desertion is when they're leaving and they're not coming back. 2 of these 4 men were Lent and Sickler. The others were not named. According to Lent, the men stole a boat, and reached the Hudson River on the western side. Lent and Sickler were traveling by foot when they passed a small village where a group of soldiers were in the middle of general military exercises. All of this comes in to play, which is why we're saying this. Soon after, the two men reached Athens and saw Sally Hamilton walking alone. Sickler grabbed Sally and, quote, abused her.
Oh, dear.
It's not clear if murder was the intended outcome, but regardless, when Sally screamed, she was killed. Lent helped Sickler carry her body to the bridge, where they pulled up a board and dropped her body into the water, and then put the board back. The men moved on to Catskill, New York, and spent 2 nights sleeping in a barn before moving on to a sloop headed for NYC. A sloop is like a small sailboat, kind of. The prosecution was able to follow the testimony and corroborated the details described by Lent. The owners of the boat stolen by the soldiers did confirm it was stolen the same night the soldiers would have deserted.
Nice.
The militia in Coxsackie, New York, were also performing exercises at the time Lent and Sickler would have passed by. The barn the men slept in was owned by William Brando, and his employees said that they saw 2 men sneak out of the barn early in the morning after sunrise. Curtis Graham was standing in the doorway of a shop when he saw 2 men quickly making their way down Main Street. And Captain Van Loan noted that 2 rough-looking characters boarded his boat in Catskill the same day.
Well, that kind of puts it all together.
Pretty open and shut, right?
Yeah.
Of course not.
Ugh.
Because what do we say at the end of every episode?
There's not
Liberty and
always.
justice for all is not always there. The good old U.S. military stepped in. And Lent's entire testimony and all of the witnesses were thrown out in an instant.
Why?
Officers from the Greenbush Barracks testified in court and said that the men were at the barracks at 9 p.m. the night Sally was murdered. And they were accounted for at revelry the next morning. Which, for those of you who don't know revelry, that's like... Yes, that's... Yes, that. So that is revelry in the morning. So they were apparently accounted for at revelry the next morning. Sickler...
They lied.
Exactly. Sickler was almost immediately acquitted of the murder and released.
Yeah.
But what about Lent?
Oh, no.
He was convicted of perjury.
Oh, no.
Those of you who don't know, perjury is when you lie in court after taking the oath to tell the truth. This is also called lying under oath or violation of an oath, or if you want to be real fancy, mendacity.
That's a fun word. Say it again.
Mendacity.
Ooh, say it again. Just kidding. Mufasa.
Lent was sentenced to 2 years at a New York State prison.
Oh my goodness, for telling the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Bless.
Even though Sickler was acquitted years after the trial, the prosecutor Elijah Williams and Judge William W. Van Ness thoroughly believed that both Lent and Sickler were guilty of killing Sally Hamilton. And if the name Van Ness sounds familiar, then you've definitely been paying attention in our episodes. In part 2 of our coverage on the duel in Weehawken, I mentioned William Peter Van Ness, who was Berg's second in the duel. William W. Van Ness is not the same person. So, not the same. Can't find where they're related either.
Okay. I was curious.
I figured. So, remember James D. Pickney's memoir that I sourced right at the top of the show a little bit ago? Well, the events of the trial were in his memoir, and we actually have him to thank for writing it down. However, his memoir was written years later, and some think it could be a little off. Regardless of whether it's all completely true or not, There were reports that Sickler made, and I put insert eye roll here, a deathbed confession.
Wah, wah.
So Sally Hamilton is buried in the upper section of Mount Hope Cemetery in Athens. Even though her headstone is barely legible due to time and the elements, and she is under a tree, which, for those who don't know and who haven't found TikToks of people cleaning headstones, which is just fascinating.
I love to watch those.
She is buried under a tree, and so anyone who's buried under a tree, there's more likely, whether you would think that it would be sheltered by the elements, like things falling off the tree and things like that. Anyways, it can cause a lot of issues. So even though her headstone is not completely legible, you can still make out the words. And it says, "Sacred to the memory of Sally Hamilton, who was murdered by unknown hands in the evening of the 25th of August, A.D. 1813, in the 20th year of her age. Parental affection erects this monument." And no one was ever officially convicted of Sally Hamilton's murder. Fun fact, though.
I like fun facts.
Sally can still be seen today.
Oh, no. I hate these things. You're evil, Chuckle.
Depending on what you believe, and according to local lore, Sally's ghost can be seen in the area where her body was found. On the website Great Northern Catskills, they say, check out boat rentals in nearby Catskill and Athens and plan your haunted paddle through Murderer's Creek. Right? So, I guess if you're in the area and want to rent a boat and see if you can go spot Sally for yourself, there's a plethora of options available for you to get there. But yeah, apparently a lot of people go around the date of her death, which would be August 25th. And it has been said that you can see Sally's ghost still haunting the area.
That's the no buzzer in case anyone is
I don't know.
wondering.
I think I think some places can hold negative residual energy because people can feel energies in different places that they are. And I mean, you never know. I've seen 2 ghosts in my lifetime, so I can't say anything. Which might be a story for another day, but I have seen both my grandfather and my dad. I saw my dad at his own funeral, which was very weird, and my mom saw him too. And then when I was 6, I think I was 6, I saw my grandfather at my cousin's house at a sleepover. And we were in 2 rooms. They were across from each other. One was like the guest bedroom, and across the hall was the playroom, my cousin's playroom. And then she had her own bedroom. So half of the girls were sleeping in the guest bedroom. The other half were sleeping in the playroom. And I remember in the middle of the night hearing someone walk up the stairs because they had this is like a super nice house, and they had those wooden stairs, like what you saw in the early 90s, were like the white front and then the wood on the top, those kind of stairs. And I could hear someone walking up the stairs, and I was like, that's weird. It could be like my uncle coming up to check on things. It was really like early in the morning, like 2, 3 a.m. Of course, 3 a.m. Anyways, the witching hour. But so I remember hearing like that, and I remember the door opening, physically opening, and I kind of woke up and I looked in the doorway, and it was my grandfather. I was like, it's weird. Well, I thought it was a dream, and I like went back to sleep. I was like, that's really weird. I wasn't the only one who saw it, because the other 3 girls who were in the king size bed with me jumped ship and left me there to sleep because I woke up the next morning and they're all gone. All of them are gone. And I go across the hallway and everybody's like in the floor in the playroom sleeping. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm like, hello. And they were like, you must not have seen it. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, you didn't see the guy come open the door like early in the morning? They're like, we thought somebody broke in. And then we went to go tell, like my cousin's parents, and they wouldn't believe us. And I was like, oh, you mean Pop? Like, yeah, he just stopped by to say hey, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I knew who he was.
I mean, like, I knew who he was. They were like, okay. It's like, so. So, yeah. And then at my dad's, which I guess I said I'll get into it later, but I guess I'll quickly get into it now. So, I mentioned in a previous episode, my father did die when I was young. I was 12 when he passed away. That's a whole other story in and of itself. There's not enough therapy or podcast time to go through that entire story. But at his funeral, you know, like you're supposed to, well, I guess like the viewing, you're supposed to stand up front and like people come through the line, tell you how sorry they are, you know, like the whole thing. So me and my mom were there, and, you know, it was like my grandparents were to one side of me, and then it was like my aunts and uncles. Parents. Yeah, my dad's parents. And then it was my aunts and uncles like beside me, and then me and my mom were kind of in the middle, kind of towards the end. And this guy came up to me and my mom, and he was like, I'm so sorry, you know, for everything. Like, I'm so sorry for everything that happened. And we were like, okay, thanks. Like, it's a weird way to say that, but okay. And he was just like, I just wanted to let you know I'm sorry for everything that happened. And he said something like, things will be better now, or he's better now. He said something like in that frame of things. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. You know, like, you know, and, he was like, try to not, you know, grieve too much. He wouldn't want you to do that. I was like, okay, which, like, I mean, I'm not a super emotional person anyway. So I was like, okay, sure. This was also when my mother was like, you're not grieving properly. We're taking you to a therapist at the age of 12. And the therapist was like, no, that's her. So he left, and I looked at my mom and I was like, that guy looks just like Dad. And she was like, I know. That's weird. And my dad's a very distinct looking person. He's not just like your average, like, I hate to say, he's not like your average white guy. Like, he's just, oh, that's him. My dad had jet black hair that was always kind of cut in like almost a mullet, but not quite. Like, kind of just like swept back. And like, he always, like,
just a mole.
Like, John Stamos in Full House, but like a little shorter.
Okay.
And so, and he, guys, look, I don't pretend that he had some like great fashion sense. Sometimes he had a porn stash. Sometimes he didn't. And it was black, and it didn't help. And he was also very, very tan. Thanks genetics, because I did not get that.
You did not get that.
And my dad was very tall. So it's like this tall, tan man with black hair. Like, he's very, and he had very striking features. So It was like, oh, that's him.
Yeah.
And I told my mom, I was like, God, that's really weird. He looks just like him. Mom was like, yeah, he does. And I walked over to my dad's mom, who I called my granny at the time. She's passed too now. And I was like, Granny, did you see that guy? She was like, who are you talking about? And I mean, like, this happened, walked, and it was a big like area that we were in, walked straight over to her. And I said, did you see that? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I said, did you see the guy that looked just like Dad? Keep in mind, all these people kept coming down the line. Well, this guy had just walked straight up to me and my mom. Nobody else.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, he was right. And I turn around and I look, and I'm like looking around, and the door is like way at the back where it would, and there were a lot of people. Right. So it would take a long time to get through. And I'm like, he was right. And I'm looking, and I was like, Mom, where did he go? And my mom was like, well, he has to be here. And she looks up and she looks around, and she's like, I don't see him.
Whoa.
And it was such a weird thing, because like I visually remember him like full person standing in front of us,
right,
talking. And I was like, that is weird. Like, and my mom saw it.
You couldn't have both imagined.
Yeah,
that.
And it was just something that was so weird. And like, my dad died very, very, very quickly. Like, something happened that morning. He was gone by that afternoon. So, and I mean, like I said, a plethora of other things in our lifetime. But, it was just very weird because it was very, very quick. And it was just like, and then he was there. And then we turn around and I'm like, oh, you saw.
Whoa.
Mom?
You saw him.
I'm not losing. Like, I know you're putting me in therapy because I'm not grieving properly, but like, I
didn't imagine this guy.
So, again, depending on what you believe, whether you have or have not seen ghosts, whether you think you have or you have not, people think different ways. So, depending on what you believe, you live in Athens, New York, maybe you can go see if you check out. August 25th is coming up. It's actually the day, 2 days after this episode comes out. It will be August 25th. So if you live in Athens, maybe check her out. See if she's there.
Well,
don't take a boat. That'd be a little weird.
Yeah.
But maybe she's there. Who knows?
Well, I have had no such experiences similar to yours. And I'm not going to go chasing any either. I'm just saying. I'm not.
It's weird. So, but anyways, that's our story on Sally Hamilton and how I've seen 2 ghosts. So there you go.
And all of the animals we've had.
The more you know. Reading Rainbow.
Not the same.
I know.
thing.
I told you though, it came on at the same exact time. So that's like the two, like I think of The More You Know, I think of LeVar Burton, I think of Reading Rainbow. Like those are and Wishbone. Like that's the progression of things that I remember. God, Wishbone was such a good show. If somebody could like bring that back.
I used to show Wishbone to my kids in class.
Loved Wishbone. If somebody could, what do they call it? Like a remake, I guess.
Yeah.
If somebody could like bring that back as a remake, love it. Anyways, I think that's it.
Nice.
Passionate about Wishbone.
We're going to the Catskills. Well, that's how we should open it. We're going to the Catskills. This week on One Nation Under Crime, we're going to the Catskills.
So yes, if you're still listening and still like us, we have a
baby.
Sorry, I can't believe my mother let me watch Dirty Dancing when I was like 8. Looking back now, I'm like, oh God.
We saw the play. My Mermaid Sisters and I went to see it. They had the Birmingham Broadway series. We went to see it, and there was a lady that one of my friends sat beside. Thank goodness I sat on the very other end of the trio, and she was really, really enamored with Johnny, and made noises when he was on the stage. It was bad.
Keep those to yourself, ma'am.
It was bad. She needed to get her own room.
I'm just saying, when we see Hamilton on the 30th, if that happens,
29th,
I'm out. 29th. So anyways, just a few days after this comes out as well.
Whoop, whoop.
So we have a website where you can find any and all ONUC information your heart could desire. And it's at onenationundercrime.com. Real hard to remember.
Mm-hmm.
We are One Nation Under Crime on Facebook and Instagram, and at ONUC Pod on Twitter. If you love our podcast as much as we do, and we know you do, please follow us and recommend us to your friends, family, coworkers, strangers on the street, anyone.
People in line at the grocery store, waiting rooms. You got to go to the dentist. You got to go to the doctor.
We've said it before, and I'll say it again. Go and leave us a 5-star review. If you leave one, take a screenshot of it. Send it to me any way you would like to, via pigeon, email, Instagram, Twitter. And if you did send it in Twitter, technically you're sending it by bird. But if you send it to me that way, I will send you a nice ONUC sticker. You will love it. It's nice. It's not a little chintzy sticker. So
It's very pretty.
We do have a Patreon if you would like to help with the cost of making and hosting this wonderful show that you love so much, that you have listened to for 15 episodes. Go do it. Because guess what, guys? We have 2 Patreon supporters.
Whoop, whoop.
Woo! So people do love us. And if you want more from us, go be a Patreon supporter. We would greatly appreciate it. I think you can donate as low as like $5 or $2 or something like that.
There you go.
So yeah, go support us on Patreon.
We support your support.
We we love you guys. We thank you for joining us again. And we'll see you here. Same time.
Different crime.
Next week. And remember that there isn't always liberty and justice for all. Goodbye.
Bye.